The airport air smelled like burnt coffee and cleaning chemicals when I landed. 14 hours in the air, 2 layovers, 7,000 miles just to be there for my brother's wedding. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Did you land?" I smiled. Despite everything between us, I still hoped this trip might feel like coming home. Outside the terminal, the evening sun hung low over the city. Taxis lined the curb. People hugged relatives they hadn't seen in years. I dragged my suitcase into the back of a cab and gave the driver the address printed on the wedding invitation. He glanced at the paper, then looked back at me through the mirror. "Are you sure about this address?" "Yes," I said. "It's my brother's wedding venue." He frowned slightly, but started the car. 40 minutes later, we pulled up to a quiet building. Dark windows, locked doors, no music, no decorations, no wedding. My stomach tightened. I checked the invitation again. Same address, same time, same date. The wind moved a loose banner on a nearby fence. It made a soft flapping sound in the empty parking lot. I called my brother. No answer. I called my mother. Straight to voicemail. I stood there alone with my suitcase while the driver watched me through the rearview mirror. 7,000 miles. And suddenly, something felt very wrong, because the wedding wasn't here, and no one had told me. Growing up, my family had a quiet way of deciding who mattered most. They never said it directly. No one ever stood in the kitchen and announced it, but everyone understood. My brother belonged. I existed. He was 3 years younger than me, but somehow everything in the house seemed to orbit around him. His soccer games determined weekend plans. His school projects covered the dining room table for weeks. His birthday parties were neighborhood events with balloons, rented bounce houses, and professional cakes. Mine were smaller, quieter. "Your brother just needs more support right now," my mother would say if I ever looked disappointed. And maybe that was true sometimes. But after years of hearing it, you start to wonder something. When would it ever be my turn? I learned early not to compete for attention. Instead, I became the easy child, the one who didn't complain, the one who handled things alone. I did my homework quietly at the kitchen counter while my parents helped him study. I packed my own lunches, I filled out my own college applications. And when I eventually moved overseas for work in Singapore, my mother told everyone proudly that I was independent. Independent is a polite word for invisible. Still, when my brother announced his wedding, I felt something strange inside me. Hope. Maybe this would be different. Maybe this time we would feel like a family. My brother called me 6 months before the wedding. "You better come," he said. "It wouldn't be the same without you." I remember standing in my apartment kitchen, looking out over the rainy city lights. "You really want me there?" I asked. "Of course," he said. That was all I needed. I booked the flight that night. 7,000 miles, 14 hours, 2 weeks of vacation days from work. I even bought a dress I normally wouldn't have spent money on. Because for once, I wanted to show up not as the forgotten daughter, but as someone who belonged. Looking back now, there were small things that should have made me pause. The group chat messages that stopped including me, the wedding planning photos posted online that I never saw firsthand. The moment my mother casually mentioned, "Plans change sometimes with weddings." At the time, I told myself I was overthinking. Families get busy, people forget things, right? But standing in that empty parking lot outside the dark venue, one quiet question kept repeating in my mind. Had they forgotten me again? Or had they simply decided I didn't need to know? I stood in that empty parking lot for a long moment. The taxi driver finally rolled down his window. "You want me to wait?" he asked. I shook my head slowly. "No, it's okay." But it wasn't okay. Not even close. The building in front of me was completely dark. A single street lamp buzzed softly above the entrance, casting pale yellow light over the locked doors. No flowers, no music, no guests, just silence. I opened the wedding invitation again, checking the address like maybe my eyes had made a mistake. But it was the same one, same location, same time. I pulled out my phone and called my brother again. Still nothing. Then I called my mother. Voicemail. A strange feeling started creeping in. Not panic exactly. More like the quiet realization that something had already happened without me. Have you ever had that moment where you suddenly realize you're the last person to know something important? I opened social media. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Then a photo appeared near the top of my feed. My cousin Melissa had posted it just 15 minutes earlier. The caption read, Beautiful ceremony today. My fingers froze. The picture showed a wedding arch covered in white roses. My brother standing beneath it. My parents smiling proudly beside him. Dozens of guests sitting in neat rows. But the location was clearly not the venue printed on my invitation. This place looked like a vineyard. Wide green hills, long wooden tables, soft lights hanging between trees. I zoomed in on the image, my heart beating harder. Everyone looked relaxed, happy, comfortable, like they had all known exactly where to be. Everyone except me. Another photo appeared a few seconds later. This one showed the reception starting. People holding glasses of champagne. My brother laughing with his friends, my mother hugging relatives. The wedding had already happened, and I was standing alone in an empty parking lot across the city, 7,000 miles away from the life I had built. Just to realize something simple. They hadn't forgotten to tell me. They had told everyone else, which meant one thing: they chose not to tell me. I slowly sat down on the curb beside my suitcase. Cars passed on the street nearby. The air smelled faintly like rain and gasoline. I tried to think back over the last few months. Every phone call, every message, every conversation. Had there been clues? Small moments where something felt slightly off? Maybe. But when you want to believe you belong somewhere, you become very good at ignoring warning signs. Another message appeared on my phone. Now it was from my cousin. "Wait, where are you?" I stared at the screen. For a long time, I didn't answer, because I already knew the truth. Everyone at that wedding had known about the venue change. Everyone except the person who had flown across the world to be there. My cousin called me a few seconds after sending that message. I answered slowly. "Where are you?" she asked again, confusion filling her voice. "At the venue on the invitation," I said quietly. There was a pause. "Ash, that's not the venue anymore." My chest tightened. "I know," I replied. She hesitated, clearly realizing something. "Oh no, you didn't know, did you?" The words felt heavier than they should have, because the truth was already clear. "No," I said. "I didn't." In the background of her call, I could hear laughter, glasses clinking, now music starting somewhere nearby. The wedding reception was already in full swing. "How did you not get the update?" she asked gently. "Everyone got the new location weeks ago?" Weeks. Not hours, not days. Weeks. That meant invitations had been changed, messages had been sent, group chats updated. Somewhere along the line, every single person attending that wedding had received the correct information. Except me. "Did my mom send it?" I asked quietly. "Yes," my cousin said. She told everyone in the family group chat. The family group chat, a chat I realized in that moment I had quietly been removed from months earlier. At the time, I assumed it was just a mistake. People switch phones, apps glitch. I never asked about it, because asking would have meant admitting something felt wrong. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to ignore small signs when you want things to be normal? My cousin lowered her voice. "Do you want the new address? You can still make it. The reception just started." I looked around the empty parking lot again. The wind pushed a loose flyer across the pavement. My suitcase sat beside me like quiet proof of how far I had traveled to be here. 14 hours on airplanes, 2 airport terminals, 7,000 miles, just to discover I wasn't actually expected. I imagined walking into that vineyard reception late, everyone already seated, music playing, people turning their heads as I arrived, like an unexpected guest, not a sister, just someone who showed up. And suddenly, something inside me felt very calm. "No," I told her softly. "Woo, I think I understand the message already." After I ended the call, I sat there for a while longer. Cars passed on the road behind me. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. The quiet evening carried on as if nothing unusual had happened. But something inside me had shifted. For years, I had told myself that the distance between me and my family was simply life happening. Different cities, different schedules, different priorities. But sitting there in that empty parking lot, the pattern finally became impossible to ignore. This wasn't distance, it was a decision. Have you ever reached the point where the truth becomes so obvious that pretending not to see it feels impossible? I stood up slowly and picked up my suitcase. The taxi driver who had dropped me off earlier was still parked down the street. He must have seen me sitting there alone for too long. He rolled down the window. "Everything okay?" he asked. I smiled politely. "Yeah," I said. "Just took a wrong turn somewhere." He nodded and opened the trunk. On the drive back toward the city, the lights from restaurants and shops blurred past the windows. I thought about the last few years, the birthdays I remembered but never heard back about, the holidays when my messages got short, replies hours later, the times I had convinced myself everyone was just busy. Looking back, the signs had always been there. I simply didn't want to see them. When we reached my hotel, I thanked the driver and carried my suitcase inside. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers and polished marble. A couple stood near the elevators laughing about something that had happened at a party. Life continued moving around me like nothing had happened. But upstairs in my room, something important became clear. I had flown across the world, hoping to feel like part of a family again. Instead, I finally understood something that had been true for a long time. I had already built a life without them. The next morning, I woke up earlier than expected. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then the memory of the empty venue came back quietly. Sunlight filtered through the hotel curtains. The city outside was already awake. Normally, I would have spent the morning trying to call my brother again, trying to understand what had happened, trying to find some explanation that made the situation less painful. But something inside me felt different now, calmer, because once you accept a truth, chasing answers becomes less important. Instead, I ordered breakfast and sat near the window, watching people walk through the streets below. Tourists taking pictures, office workers rushing toward coffee shops. The world was moving forward. And strangely, so was I. Around noon, my phone finally buzzed. It was my mother. Her message was short. "Oh, honey, we thought you knew the venue changed." I stared at the screen for a moment. No apology, no surprise that I had traveled halfway across the world. Just a casual explanation, as if the situation were nothing more than a small misunderstanding. A second message arrived a few minutes later. "You should have called someone." I put the phone down on the table, because suddenly the entire situation felt very clear. They hadn't forgotten. They simply assumed my presence wasn't important enough to double-check. And for the first time in years, that realization didn't hurt the way I expected. It felt like closure. That afternoon, I walked through the city instead of returning to the airport immediately. If I had already flown 7,000 miles, I figured I might as well see something before leaving. The streets were busy with weekend markets. Musicians played near the park fountain. Couples sat outside cafes drinking coffee. At one point, I stopped near a bridge overlooking the river. The water moved slowly beneath the sunlight. I leaned against the railing and thought about everything that had happened. Growing up, leaving home, building a life across the world, and finally coming back, just to realize the place I once called family had quietly moved on without me. Have you ever noticed how some realizations feel painful at first, but peaceful once you fully accept them? Standing there, I understood something simple. The life I had created overseas wasn't temporary. It wasn't a backup plan. It was my real life. The friendships, the work, the apartment that looked over the city skyline, the quiet evenings cooking dinner while rain tapped against the windows. All of it was real. All of it belonged to me. And for the first time in a long while, I stopped wondering what my family thought about it, because their opinion no longer defined anything about who I was. 2 days later, I boarded the return flight. 14 hours in the air again. But this time the trip felt different. Not like a disappointment, more like the closing of a chapter. Somewhere over the ocean, I looked out the airplane window at the clouds stretching endlessly below. For years, I had carried a quiet hope that someday my family would see me differently, that if I tried hard enough, showed up enough, cared enough, something would change. But sometimes the most powerful moment in a person's life comes when they stop waiting for that change. Not with anger, not with resentment, just acceptance. Because the truth is simple. You don't have to stay connected to people who never truly made space for you. And sometimes the longest journeys, the 7,000-mile flights, the years of effort, exist only to teach one final lesson. You were never meant to belong there. You were meant to build something somewhere else. And once you finally understand that, freedom becomes surprisingly quiet. What would you have done in that moment? Comment below.